All right, this is 2016, problem number 3. We had this observational study, or we had this article that stated this, and we were asked to identify some of the different components of this, including ideas about observational study versus experiment. So here we go. So first, we were identifying the explanatory and the response variables. So something really tricky here. If you just said smoking for the explanatory variable and Alzheimer's disease for the response, you get marked down to a P. You have to indicate the variability of it, like the explanatory variable is whether or not the person smoked, and the response, whether or not the person developed Alzheimer's disease. It's a variable, so you have to indicate that variability of that statement, not just smoking and Alzheimer's disease. So whenever you look at the grading on that, then that's what you see. It's essentially correct if they did both variables correctly. So here is how you would get marked, such as smoking versus not smoking, Alzheimer's versus not developing Alzheimer's, partially. You described it. One variable is correct, but the other is not described correctly. Neither is described correctly, but you say smoking for the response and Alzheimer's for the smoking for the experimental design and Alzheimer's for the response, explanatory variable. Or if you describe them correctly, but you flipped them, then that's partially correct. Now, the second component, is this a study or an observational, or is this described as an observational study or an experiment? So, and then of course explain. So first you had to pick that it's an observational study. And there was a couple of ways that the correct explanation had to be done. So you had to say something to the effect of the subjects were just observed, and we were just seeing if they had developed the disease or not. We were just observing them. Because if you didn't even say just observed, or so, let me show you specifically where they go into that. So in order to get that full credit for that problem, you had to say that, let's see, the response selects the correct type, so observational study, and provides the correct explanation that smoking status was not randomly assigned to the subjects. So, and that, or that smoking status was only observed or just observed. Because watch this. If the response selects correct type study and then explanation, the smoking is observed without a modifier such as just or only or merely or simply. And then you also didn't state that the treatments were assigned, then you lost credit. So a couple things they were going for here. Only observed smoking, the explanatory was only observed, and or that the smoking was not randomly assigned to the subjects. And furthermore, if you look at this other partial description, if you say only smoking, but you then say something like simply stating that the treatment was and you were too generic, there was not random assignment of the treatment to the subjects. That phrasing, random assignment of the treatment to the subjects, was not specific enough because it did not indicate the smoking as the explanatory variable treatment. So it does not refer to smoking status as the variable that would have been randomly assigned in an experiment. You don't get credit. So lots of going into that. that they are just merely observing the smoking, and they are not, and you didn't say anything about random assignment of the smoking to the treatment. So here's again what I wrote. And I write these things down and then I go grade them. And then I went back and I thought, oh, good. So I said subjects were just observed over the 23-year period and their natural traits were recorded, smoking or not, developing the disease or not. And that's not even all full credit yet. I had to then go into this. Only if the subjects were randomly assigned to a treatment. Okay, that's not okay yet. That's not okay yet. Such as forcing them to smoke or not, and then assessing the outcome. Would cause and effect be an option? See, such as forcing them to smoke or not. Random assignment to the treatment, such as smoking or not. That was what finished me out to get that full credit on that. Okay? Thorough explanations required. All right, and then the last one, then they had this exercise situation, which the exercise was mentioned in the article as a possible confounding variable. So explain how that could be a confounding variable in this study. So I said, if exercise also has an impact on Alzheimer's, then you would not have the ability to have isolated the smoking as the only variable that you are testing as the explanatory one. And then I go into some examples and we'll come back to that. But let's go ahead and look and see grading wise what you needed to have. So here we go. So for credit here, provides a reasonable explanation that exercise is related to smoking. Okay. Wait, is related to smoking status? I don't think I did that. I put that exercise could have an impact. Okay. And states that exercise status might influence whether a person develops Alzheimer's disease. Okay. So far, I have not provided a reasonable explanation that links exercise and smoking, meaning kind of like you would have a more healthy person probably wouldn't be who exercises more, might also be the person who doesn't smoke. Okay. So let's table that for a second. Partially correct if the response describes only one of the two components. So if you only talked about how exercise might influence whether a person develops Alzheimer's disease as well, then there's your partial. Okay, if the response only describes how smoking and exercise jointly influence whether the person develops Alzheimer's, which I might have done that, so we'll look here in a second. Or if the response mentions the association in each component, but also includes an incorrect statistical statement like you interchange the things. Okay, so let's go back and let's read exactly what I had put there and see if I made an E or a P. For example, if the non-smokers are generally the people who are more health conscious, they may also be the people who are generally the ones who exercise more regularly. Ding, 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 ding. That got me the E because I connected a certain propensity of one explanatory variable to go with a certain propensity in the explanatory ones. So the non-smokers and more exercises could go together. And I think I said, if exercise also has an impact on the Alzheimer's, then you would not have isolated the smoking. Okay, so see, for example, non-smokers happen to also be the ones who exercise more because they're health conscious. If that group is the one who demonstrated a reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, then the researchers would not know if that reduced risk was because of the smoking, because of not smoking, or because of exercising regularly. So I had it connected, talked about a person having both those traits that reduce Alzheimer's, or were suspected of together, that's the confounding variable. All right, so that was a toughie. So read those things there. And of course, here's your 4s at EEP, or EEE, for EEE, and then EEP for 3. Then your different ways you can get a 2. So quite a few ways you can get that, 4 ways to get a 2, and then EII or PPI for a 1. Okay. All right. So there was your 2016 problem number 3 explained.